go ahead and jump right into it and get started. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we begin the introductions. Please mute your microphone to help reduce noise, especially for the recording. Definitely feel free to use chat box to the right. And I'm just going to type in hi real quick just to see so you can see where it's at. To ask questions throughout the presentation. Olivia Christina Bush, who's our large track division manager, will be in the chat monitoring that, and we'll be answering questions as we go. We'll also have dedicated Q&A time at the end, so feel free to use that chat box throughout our time together. My name is Jeremiah Rivera. I am the large track division's community outreach coordinator here at the City of Houston's Housing and Community Development Department. As I mentioned, my supervisor, my boss, Olivia Christina Bush, is our large track division manager, and she will be in the chat. And I believe our assistant director, Ray Miller, has jumped on the line. I'm going to pass it to him to just kick off a few introductory words before we get into the heart of this presentation. Ray?
Hey, thanks, Jeremiah, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We're excited about an opportunity regarding an investment that we've made within the Third Ward area, and what we're wanting to hear from you is some feedback on some initial thoughts that we have, and we're excited to present this to you, and look forward to hearing from your comments. So, thank you again for attending.
Thank you for that, Ray. And everyone, again, just please feel free to make liberal use of that chat box, especially because I know it's not ideal that I'm a little stuffed up right now. I'll try to speak a little slower and louder than usual because of that, but I recognize it may cause some issues. So again, feel free to use that chat, and Olivia's going to be monitoring that full time as we move forward the rest of this slide deck presentation. And just to give you some heads up, our agenda today, our slides actually shouldn't go too long, and then we're going to have plenty of time to have an actual conversation. But we're going to start off with talking about the site background, the development itself, those upcoming opportunities that Ray mentioned. Then we're going to talk a little bit about community engagement and how we can work with you, partner with you as community leaders to make that outreach into the greater Third Ward, excuse me. And then again, we'll have that facilitated conversation at the end to talk about what we will go through in these next upcoming slides. So let's talk about the actual site itself that the church sits on. Um, Before we talk numbers, before we talk, bricks and sticks and all that sort of thing, I do want to mention that, we here at HCD, we recognize that while this is a Google Maps screenshot, we recognize that the Wesley Chapel AME Church has been a spiritual cornerstone of the greater community for more than 100 years. And if you think about when it was considered the rock church in the first decade of the 20th century, even longer than that, going back 20, 30 years before even that. But whatever the features of the brick and mortar as that has changed over the last 100 years, the important thing, and again, the city recognizes is what happened on the inside of those sticks and bricks, that brick and mortar, where family, friends, your neighbors came together to either worship, celebrate births and additions to the family through weddings, the lives of loved ones who've passed on. All that energy has left a huge, immeasurable impact that goes beyond economics for the Third Ward. And while the city did purchase the land that we're looking at here in September of 2021, we take it very seriously what this site has meant for you as community leaders and for the community as a whole. And we definitely want your input. And we're asking actively for your input and how this space can continue to be an asset for you, your family, and your friends, and again, all of your neighbors throughout the Third Ward. So I just want to say that again, we are being very intentional in making sure that we ask your feedback and how to get the feedback of everyone else in the Third Ward. Um, and so you're going to hear a lot of times throughout this presentation that we want your feedback. You're going to hear a lot about how some things are open-ended, and While sometimes that can be a little bit annoying, it's because we are requesting your feedback and how to move forward. So all that said, a little bit about the facts, just so we're all kind of on the same page with the context. That vacant land, that green space on this, square box, if you want to think of it that way, is about 62,500 square feet, with the church occupying about 17,500 square feet. We recognize again, the brick and mortar itself is an historical landmark and protected, and it's not our intention whatsoever to demolish or diminish the church itself with any new construction. So as we're moving forward in this presentation, keep that in mind. That's something we have in the forefront of our thoughts. And another thing, as a protected landmark, as we're thinking through what we're going to show you in terms of first proposals for the site plan, we also took into account not building structures taller than the church directly adjacent to it. So this is just a kind of final side view of the church, which I'm sure many of you have been to many times. Before we transition to the next slide, which before I do that, again, I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. This is just a first blush of what we have as a vision for this site, and we definitely welcome your feedback. So saying that, what we are looking at here is an artist rendering looking either south or north on Emancipation, depending on which picture you're looking at. And what you're seeing here is that rendering of the church, of course, and then directly adjacent to it is our proposal for up to 70 single-family home ownership opportunities. From this angle, the bird's eye view, here you can see connecting where the church is now with a skywalk, what that 70 condo unit could look like, with a courtyard in the middle and also a parking structure. Again, the idea is to this is that first blush, and one thing that we did intentionally do here is, as clearly as we could, at least with this site rendering, is show how we're being intentional and respecting that history of the church with the condo color exterior matching the AME church exterior as well. But that's covering the vacant land. We want to spend a significant amount of our time together talking about renovation of the inside of the church. Again, we are not going to tear it down or destroy it or impact the exterior of the church itself. But the city is prepared to move forward with extensive renovation of the interior of the church, so that way it again, using the feedback from the community and what we hear from you, so that the interior of the church serves as a economic cornerstone of the third ward community moving forward. So over the last 100 years was that spiritual aspect. The next 100 years, how can we make this space a economic and cultural cornerstone stone of the third ward? And so some of the ideas that we have, and again, these are our ideas. We're gonna have time to that first conversation about what the third ward needs is to renovate the first floor to support either a couple of options here, either some sort of micro grocery store, perhaps a restaurant or coffee shop, or even an urgent care or pharmacy. Again, that would be on the first floor. On the second and third floor, we're envisioning again with the idea of this space becoming a asset for the entire community in the third ward. For the second and third floor, a combination of co-working space with conference rooms and potential office space for small business incubators. So folks have the opportunity to come and use that second and third floor to do what it is they need to do for their small business. Maybe if you're a student studying in a quiet space, whatever the case may be. Again, these are just some ideas of the city's ideas of what the church can become, and we're going to have plenty of time to get your initial thoughts as we go forward. I want to transition a little bit away from the church itself to what we refer to as attainable home ownership. So this is a rendering of that side view of the front view of that church. If you're looking across it from across the street from Emancipation, here you can see our intention for that skywalk. Again, think about what that renovation church could become, and having direct access for those homeowners in the condos. We envision on the first and second floor, wrapping around the condominium building, live workspaces on the first and second floor, and above them, uh, on the third and fourth floor, a combination of efficiency and 1 and 2 bedroom condo home ownership opportunities. We think that due to the downtown proximity of the site in the third ward, this will be a very appealing opportunity for third ward constituents that want to both live and work in the third ward. And again, as we're going through all this, everything is draft, nothing is set in stone, and we're going to talk about that, why that is in a little more detail. Here you'll see a rendering of what the live work first and second floor unit could look like. And on this slide, to the left is an efficiency design concept, and to the right is the 1 bedroom design concept. And last but not least, a concept for a 2 bedroom space. Actually, this one is the last but not least of these section of slides, just kind of to give you an idea of the parking garage and that courtyard, which you may remember from the bird's eye view. And then go in a little more detail about what we mean by affordable home ownership. Again, these are all when we have numbers listed here of the up to is very specific in that we, like everyone else, any design plan has to go through permitting. And so this is just based on kind of that first flush of work. Later down the road, we'll be able to solidify the exact number of units. But we're anticipating up to 70 condo units. Again, this would be something where someone would buy in and own the condo itself. Up to 12 live work units, with the rest being a combination of those efficiency and 1 to 2 bedrooms. When we mention affordable home ownership, for this particular site, we're talking about households earning up to 120% area median income, and making the sales of those condo units income restricted to that area median income. So for a family of 3, as of now, that would be a household earning up to $95,700. For a household of 2, that would be $85,050. And for an individual, that would be $74,400. So this is area median income as determined yearly by HUD, and the income restriction would would help us keep at the affordable range for third world residents that want to stay here. The picture to the right, this isn't a design concept that we came up with. But for those of you that may not be familiar with live workspace, this photo is from Urban Toronto. And this is a concept for that live workspace where that first floor, someone can walk in this particular example, it's a photography shop, but that could be whatever that owner wants it to be. So yoga shop, or yoga studio, I think is how they would prefer to call that. A coffee shop, somewhere to get a quick breakfast burrito, while the second floor is where the owner actually lives. I know another popular concept besides photography is art galleries. So plenty of possibilities of combining what's going on with the renovation of the church itself, and also those 12 work live units. So we're more than halfway through these slides. I promised you I wouldn't be talking this entire time. We want to talk a little bit about the development process, and essentially this is the timeline for enacting this vision, right? So the first step, of course, is always finding a site for us to develop, and of course that's already occurred as we purchased this in September. The land in September of 2021, and we're smack dab in beginning of number 2, gathering community feedback, going through now through the end of September 2022. And this is going to be vitally important. This is where we're really going to need your partnership, because that community feedback is going to directly inform steps 3 and 4. So step 3 here is issuing a notice of funding availability. And that's actually called NOFA for short. And that's essentially the application that we send out as the city for developers to apply to build the condo units. So it'd be our intention to incorporate some of your feedback into what design features can be done based on the limitations of the land size and keeping that historical look and feel, and release that out in October of this year. The developers would have 3 months to respond to that. Um, we would also take your ideas for step four, for a request for information release, and that would be for the redevelopment and renovation of the inside of the church. Um, so whatever feedback that we get from now until the end of September will directly impact how those documents look. To talk a little bit more about the request for information, we're going to hear, I'm sure, a ton of great ideas throughout the month and a half. And what we're going to do is massage that, summarize it, make it a little more actionable. And we will put it into that request for information. And we will essentially ask folks, okay, this is what the community, we'll ask the open community, um, developers, business owners, okay, this is what the community wants to see out of the Wesley AME Church. How would you do this? We're requesting your proposals and information for that. So the more information we can get from our broader, uh, from the broader third ward, the more it can be in line with what the community wants to see. Moving to step five, uh, the developer for the condos will likely be selected if we're able to go on this timeline in early February of 2023. I do want to note all dates are subject to change. So, we will update these timelines as life events happen. But if we're able to hit these timelines, these are all this is how we think this will play out. Moving on to this slide, March 2023 is when the church lease currently ends. And so we're looking at beginning construction of the condos themselves in May of 2023, with the renovation of the inside of the church beginning not too long after that in July of 2023. In step eight, we're looking to start pre-selling homes. So construction will not be have been completed, but pre-selling homes sometime in fall of 2023, and then the renovation of the church itself complete in July of 2024. So I know that was a lot of dates, a lot of things to keep in your mind, but that's the general timeline, of course, with the important caveat of all dates are subject to change. And we're winding down, only a few more slides, everyone. We kept mentioning over, and I hoped I really impressed on you that we're really hoping to work with you on this community engagement piece. Not only to hear your direct feedback tonight as the start of the conversation, but also how we can make sure that our community engagement is inclusive and that everyone who wants to be able to participate in this conversation throughout the third ward has that ability to do so. So we are going to have a comment period again starting tonight, and we are going to have that online and in person. We are planning on hosting two events in September that will be hybrid events, so people will have an opportunity to join in person and at the same time join virtually like you all are with us tonight. And we want to, again, that idea of inclusivity, make sure people are comfortable whether they want to attend in person. There's still a pandemic going on. If they want to attend virtually, where it's just easier for them, whatever the option they want to do, they have that ability to do so. And also, if they're not able to attend those events, they will have that online option, which we'll go over on this slide. So we are very shortly about to launch what we are calling our Community Input Hub, and it'll be a 24/7 tool to show where folks can leave their direct feedback to us. And actually, I'm going to end the slide deck presentation to show you that tool. If you give me just a moment as I navigate over. Um, let's see, this is actually a sneak peek. It hasn't launched yet, but we anticipate launching it very soon, definitely before the end of next week. You can see in the bright red that the page is currently in development. So we will have a landing page for this development with information to get, so that way people weren't able to attend, they at least have that bird's eye view of what we're trying to accomplish. Pictures here will be updated as we go through the development process, and once we get finalized site plans from a chosen developer. And this is that online tool that I mentioned. This will be free to use. I already have it loaded up here, so I'm going to pull it up just to show you what it looks like. Here we'll have, again, an opportunity for public comments. Uh, Folks, we have a couple of survey questions here. What type of mixed use opportunities you'd like to see at on the first floor? An opportunity to fill in more of what that selection is. So if it's other, or even if you just want to give more feedback on what's needed for any of these three to be successful here, folks can do that. We also have a very similar question for the second and third floor. How would you like those second and third floor spaces to be utilized for the community? Another question, another open-ended question to give folks the opportunity to expand on that choice. And then finally, we have just, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? So we'll gather this feedback from this online tool from our session tonight and the two currently unscheduled sessions in September. And that's going to directly inform, again, that NOFA and that, that Notice of Fund and Availability, or NOFA, and that Request for Information, or RFI. So I just want to reiterate again and again, we really need you all to help us get the word out to the broader third ward, I got it right that time, community, um, so that way folks can have that opportunity to give that feedback. And it's truly in line of what the third ward needs and is driven by our constituents. So with that, I am going to pause. We have about 30 minutes. And before we get to the facilitated conversation part, I do want to pause and see if there's any questions in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves to ask any clarifying questions before we have that facilitated conversation.
This is Brian Van Tuber again. Will the church remain owned by the city, or will the condo association have ownership over the church?
Olivia, would you like to address that one?
Yes. Hi, I'm Olivia Christina Bush, Vision Manager, and yes, it's the city's intention to retain ownership of the church.
Okay, so it'll never turn back into a church then?
That's part of why we're here tonight, to see what the community wants that facility or the church to become. If there is an interest for it to remain a place of worship, we would like to hear that feedback.
Does anyone else have any questions before we head to the facilitated conversation for the rest of our time together?
Hey Jeremiah, this is Mike Pittman here, Cushman and Wakefield. My own quick question was for the comment section. Will some of the materials that if we submit them via email to the city, will those be taken into consideration as well too?
Yes, we can take directly email feedback into consideration. We'll put it into I call it a giant spreadsheet because that's literally what it is, but we will put it in into the consideration spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Michelle Barnes, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I'm just wondering if there is a training program component for first-time home buyers for the condos.
So yes, absolutely. All of the city's programs that we're involved with through Large Track, any home ownership opportunities, we require home buyers to attend the HUD approved 8-hour course. We would definitely work with the developer that wins the bid or the award to build out the condos, if they want to add additional homebuyer education courses, we would actually prefer that. They would put that in their proposal as part of the community outreach and marketing. And if they provide those type of classes, or partner with a nonprofit that provides those classes to strengthen their application for winning the opportunity to build the condominiums.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions before we move to the facilitated conversation?
I had one additional question.
Sure.
Was the design thrown against the walkable places requirements that Emancipation Avenue is part of?
So we are working with our planning department with the Livable Spaces initiative. So they are informing our design decision, and there will be a part of the NOFA for a developer who adheres to that new initiative. They will probably be given additional points in their scoring criteria if they, submit a design that aligns with that initiative.
So there's been no interaction with the walkable places people?
No, sir, but if you have that information, at this point, this is the best time for us to reach out and get up to speed with that initiative and what it means, so that there is connectivity between, it's right down the street, through what is already happening in Third Ward for what we're going to do for our design as well. So if you have that information, I don't know if you're at a computer, you could put it in the chat, or please email myself or anyone on my team so that we can make that connection.
Okay, I'll try putting it in the chat.
Thank you, sir.
And that's actually, Brian, a really good example of the concrete information and feedback that can help us inform the NOFA and the future RFI for the renovation of the church. That actionable specific feedback allows us to, write that into those documents, because everything that we put into our official competitions have to be actionable for developers and business owners to respond to. So that was a great comment, and definitely the type of feedback we're looking for.
Jeremiah, this is Mike Pittman again. I have one other comment to mention. I think one of a unique thing that could be included, depending on how we structure the commercial portion of the project and choosing and assigning anyone. I think that would be a great opportunity to really have something that spells out a scoring metric for jobs created within the neighborhood, and what level those jobs are created as far as income wise. I know you can't necessarily dictate the business owner, but I think taking that into consideration and reporting on that would be great for economic development initiatives going forward here.
Awesome, thank you for that. I see hand raised. Sorry, I'm navigating different panels. Looks like Pastor Ed. That's all I can see from your name, Pastor Ed. Please go ahead.
Well, I do have a question that, and I'm forgive me just for information I just didn't know, in terms of the functionality of the church in the project. At this time, the church will continue to function by the end of this project. The idea is, how will the church interact with the project? And that's one question. The second, I think we just kind of collaborated on in terms of the jobs from the community, in terms of points for not only those who are tenants who may, businesses that may be coming in, but also those who may be part of the building process, just making sure we collaborate to make sure we get jobs in the community.
So to make sure I understand your first question, was it how are the two processes of developing the church and building the condos going to interact?
Yes.
So they're going to be two separate development processes. So that the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability, will be strictly for the condos, and then the request for information will be strictly for the development of the redevelopment of the inside of the church. It may be possible that one developer wins both applications, but it's likely that it's going to be two different, and they'll be going kind of like in a parallel track, for lack of a better way of saying it. Olivia, is there something you would add to that?
Yeah, I think the second question was already answered in terms of making sure how we can synthesize the people who are going to be tenants in terms of the jobs given in the community, and also for the contracts for the building of process to make sure we somehow inspire everyone to hire as many people from the community as well.
So the city of Houston already has a very strong and very strict minority business and small business compliance requirement for our contractors and for our developers. They won't be able to actually draw down city funds unless they hire women and minority and small businesses. What we can also do is emphasize in the NOFA application that there is a good faith effort to hire local tradesmen on the construction of the apartments or the condominiums for this particular project within the Third Ward community. What we have found in some of our recent developments that it's not as easy as it sounds to find tradesmen, local tradesmen. So we would probably rely on the community as well in this initiative to make sure that we that we're able to make the right contacts to ensure that we can hire local, and I say local within Third Ward. The second question I think was about the home ownership and making also a strong effort to ensure that the homes are sold to residents of Third Ward. Was that the second question, Pastor?
Yes.
That is definitely our goal within, and that's why we are focusing on affordable housing. We do realize with the over gentrification of Third Ward that there are a lot of people who have grown up in this community who are being priced out of the community. And we have to, we still have to adhere to all fair housing guidelines. And so we're going to have to be, let me see what I want to word this. We will definitely see what possibilities are available to us as a government entity to be able to also sell local. It's not something that I can definitely commit to you, but we will definitely make sure that the apartments are priced that anyone who wants to buy, who lives in Third Ward, will be able to afford to.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
There's a comment in the chat, Michelle. Is there a process being considered for accessing the live workspaces? So one of the things that we'll reemphasize over and over the next month and a half is that we are open to feedback on everything when it comes to this. So Um, in terms of the process, the folks that are going to be writing the NOFA and the RFI are here in the chat, here on this meeting, and we'll be attending all the sessions and we'll be reading all of your comments. So if you have specific feedback on what you would like that to look like, we can definitely, if that's what rises to the top, we can definitely incorporate that. There was a question from Krista: is there a minimum amount of time that homeowners must reside before selling the and must the people be first-time home buyers? So that's two different questions that I think Olivia is putting the answer to in the chat. The first question, first answer is the city imposes a 5-year affordability period on all of our homeownership programming, aside from the very specialized home buyer choice program, which is not relevant here. So the short answer is actually 5 years, and then the long answer was that other rambling that you just heard. And then the second question, I just want to make sure we read it. First-time home buyers. I don't think we've determined if it's going to be. So the second question is if you're essentially, I think if I'm reading correctly, if you're buying into this development, must you be a first-time home buyer and have a 120% area median income?
So yeah, I was trying to respond to the chat and answer the questions, and so I was getting a little behind. So no, it's not a first-time home buyer requirement. We are building a lot of smaller units to keep the affordability where it needs to be. We're looking at efficiencies and also 1-bedrooms. So we do feel like we may attract the senior population as well as maybe the young adults that are just starting off their career. So we do feel like we're going to have a very diverse community at different price points, but the first-time home buyer is not going to be a requirement.
Hi, this is Falade. Actually, I was asking if the first homeowners sell to someone, must the folks that are buying the homes meet the 120% area median income requirement?
If the sale happens within the first 5 years, yes.
Okay.
All right. Any last questions before we head on to the facilitated conversation portion? Okay. This is the part. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I think comments are later. Right, this is questions only.
Okay. We gonna have the rest of our time, I think, together because it is 6:45. A facilitated conversation around 3 different questions, and as I mentioned during the presentation, we want to make sure that we're incorporating as many different viewpoints in the Third Ward community as possible. So this first question is very simply, how can we as a city best engage the Third Ward community? Again, we have the online tool that that we showed you that will be open and online 24/7 very shortly, going through September. We also have we'll have 2 open public community sessions to gather this feedback as well. Those have not been scheduled yet, but they will be shortly. But to get people to those websites and to get people to those meetings, you need to be able to reach them and let them know they're happening. So here you'll see that I have a whole bunch of, actually here in the middle, this is from the 2018 Third Ward Complete Community Action Plan, and it was just a map of the then active civic clubs. Of course, that's subject to change. That was a static document in 2018. So this is where we're going to ask you, everyone who's joined us tonight, how do we best engage the Third Ward community? Who are the churches, the civic clubs, and nonprofit organizations, the schools, and importantly, if you know the contact person who can facilitate that conversation, all the better. So I'm going to pause and ask all of you, how do we best engage the third ward community? Michelle, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I think that as far as the schools are concerned, the prevailing process is, I hesitate to say, site-based management. So the principals are the primary contact at the schools to engage parents if the principals will, if they are connected. So I would suggest contacting the principals of the schools in the area.
This is Brian. I would also suggest you contact the Greater Third Ward Super Neighborhood. There you go.
All right, Pastor Ed.
I'm quite sure this have already been included, but the EEDC.
Okay. I see some hands that are still raised, but I think they might have been from before. Also, feel free to use the chat if that's easier for you as well. Any other suggestions? Schools, civic clubs, churches?
Well, there are some existing civic clubs, and of course, there are lots of churches in the Third Ward area that would disseminate information from you.
The Third Ward is Home Civic Club.
Yeah.
Which civic club was that again? I'm sorry.
Third Ward
Third
is
Ward?
Home Civic
Oh.
Club.
And with the historic nature of Wesley, I think it would be very important to collaborate with pretty much all of the historic churches in the community, which we do have a lot of them. But I think it would be a benefit for not only this project but future projects as well to collaborate with all of the historic churches.
Pastor Ed, would you happen? Is there like a for lack of a better way of saying it, a website or a resource where we can pull from that list?
I can help compile that list for you.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Okay, and I'm just making notes as y'all can see here so we can follow up. Let's see. Anything in the chat? All the CDCs in the neighborhood? There we go. Any other thoughts before we move on? We only have a couple more questions in the conversation.
Complete communities would be part of that too.
Yes, that's a great point. Complete communities.
So would the Third Ward Community Cloth Cooperative?
Community cloth cooperative. Okay.
Cooperative.
Oh, cooperative. Thank you. Let's see. Elected officials was an idea there. We'll put them Civic Club, I guess. I see Shape Community Center. Thank you. And Deloitte Parker as a contact. Okay. Any other last thoughts? And I see TERS, the TERS Management District leaders. And you'll have to forgive my spelling as I'm typing as fast as I can. Anyone else want to unmute themselves with one last suggestion before we move on to the next question? And if you're putting something in the chat and we move on to the next question or something else pops up, we'll have the chat later and we'll update this on our end so we can do that outreach. So thank you so much, everyone, for these ideas, and we'll definitely be reaching back out to you, Pastor Ed, for that list. The second question that we had was, there was a lot of, we kind of danced around a lot of that earlier, but in terms of revitalization of the church itself, that first floor, the reason why we had the ideas that we had at the beginning is, again, these images are from the 2018 Third Ward Complete Community Action Plan, showing, and again, static document on the bottom left, that the Riverside Clinic had recently closed. That was the map of the clinics within the Third Ward. And on the top right, map of grocery stores within the Third Ward. I believe the closest one is the Randall's, that is actually right by the HCD office. So that's what came to our mind when we were thinking about what that first floor could be. But this is where we, again, in this conversation, we turn it back over to all of y'all. What do you think would be the best use for that first floor? We'll take all ideas.
Yeah, I really think that it depends a lot on who is living next door and what their needs are. I would think that an eatery, a food source, like a grocery store, would be desirable. But I think that's going to have to come through survey of residents, as well as, if it can be captured, people who are transiting the area.
Okay, any other thoughts on what the first floor could be?
I've seen a development like this in the Washington, D.C. area. And I think providing some of the highest needs that the community have, if it's food. Also, I believe I missed the first portion of it, but I believe I saw how you will have some type of gathering space as well, and how that can be utilized by the community and also by the church in whatever way. So I do see how that mixed use could be very strategic, and definitely if the community needs a grocery store, something that is a very well-known grocery store anchor unit, would be great.
And you are correct, Pastor. We again, these are just our ideas. They're not baked into they're not etched in stone. But we were visioning the second and third floor being co-op, some sort of workspace, um, uh, business incubator, that kind of thing. Um, I know in my mind, and I try not to lead the conversation, I think it'd be awesome if the Live Workspaces, those business owners are able to use that potential business incubator space to grow their small business, um, and make it, synergistic and impactful for everyone. But it's not about my ideas. I'm not a third ward resident. Anyone else have ideas on what that first floor could look like?
Well, there's a lot of pets in the area, so I imagine if you had something pet-based there, it would be popular.
Oh, as my colleagues know, my pets love to jump in on these presentations all the time. So I am 100% fond of that idea.
What would that look like?
I'm not sure how much space you have there, but grooming, maybe pet food. I don't know if there's room for a veterinarian there.
So kind of like one of those little Petcos that have like a vet to the side. We're kind of like a one-stop shop for your cat or dog. Anyone else have some ideas of what that first floor can look like?
Space, along with the space restriction, for some reason, I'm thinking some type of within the some type of urgent care after hour or something, because I know we have a couple of things in the community, but just trying to think of all of the medical needs that one can have as well.
And I see there is another, as you were saying that, I think you had a second vote, that pharmacy kind of, I know it's different than an urgent care clinic, but a medical, but like medical, we'll call that general access to medical care, with the two ideas of an urgent care clinic and a pharmacy underneath it.
Is there any space for exercise, meditation, something that's more mindful, not as traditional, oriented to medicine and traditional healthcare?
That is definitely an idea we could put in there, especially. So I know we're framing this as the first floor, but this could also be ideas that go into the live work units as well, right? I use the example of the yoga space. Yoga. There's actually a yoga space right next to where we work at Travis Street. So I think there's definitely space for something like that if that's what the community wants to see. Specifically with the meditation space, just to wind down, thinking about that second and third floor where there's kind of, you can't see it very well in this picture, but there's office space. That could be something where that goes as well. So I'm going to put meditation here to wind down our last our last minutes together. And again, this is just the first conversation. Um, I'm sure you'll have plenty. Everyone will have. If you're like me, when meetings end, that's when I have my best ideas. So that's why we want to have that website up and running pretty soon, so that way we can keep continuing collecting this feedback from you and the community as a whole. Before we wind down, uh, we were talking about the first floor a lot. Just kind of, I guess if you haven't been inside the church a bit, it's pretty spacious on that second and third floor. Um, any ideas on how that can be revamped to be an asset for the community? Let's see, senior center, activity center, and that could be first or second and third floor, I think. So I'm gonna put that here for now.
I think that as a former member of Wesley, having spent early years there, it would be good to have some kind of historical information about the church, acknowledging its achievements, impact on the community somehow. And that's a way of engaging the current church members, because they are going to exist someplace else. And I'd like to see a connection to the historic space.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. Cataloging the history of the church itself. Any other thoughts from the group on the second and third floor?
I would think some kind of a Wi-Fi internet free zone that allow people to come there and use the Wi-Fi.
Yes, can't forget if how important Wi-Fi is just even for applying for jobs, right? That's one of those things that people sometimes forget. It's hard to fill out paper applications these days if people even have them. Any other thoughts on the second and third floor? All right. Again, this is just the first part of the conversation. This is not the last part. So if you have any thoughts, you can definitely. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that was.
Yeah, getting close to the end, I just had an idea that perhaps the second and third floor, or second and or third floor, could be used for community meetings. Those were traditionally held in the basement of the church as public space. But
Rookie mistake and muted myself. I see a comment about potential study space. for students. So study space and maybe some sort of community library. Maybe something a little more advanced and then leave a book, give a book sort of thing. But we can definitely explore that opportunity as well. A copy shop. Yep. Because no one that I know owns a personal printer anymore. And then you need that one document that one time, right, to do what you need to do, and you can't find a Kinko's open. Think I got all the ideas in the chat, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. You've heard me use the phrase over and over again. This is just the start of the conversation. If you have any ideas that come up afterwards, we're definitely open to that. And in fact, actively encouraging that using the website and reaching out to us via email. The new homebuyer, HoustonTX.gov, is kind of the catch-all mailbox, so the entire team will have access to that. If you'd like to email me directly, I'm putting that into the chat as well. And what we're going to do, just again, to because it has been an hour and we've talked about a lot of the different things, I just want to wind down of our action items for you. Well, our action items for you, I should say. We probably will get this out to you, this recording, by Monday. Knock on wood. Tuesday at the latest. Knock on wood again. So that we have access to it. And we will definitely, when these sites go live, because as you saw, they're in production right now, we will email you that directly as well. And also this page as well. So the last thing we'll also email you as soon as they're scheduled are those open sessions. They're going to be pretty similar to what we went through today, except there'll be that in-person component and the online component, and they'll be open to the public. So you can definitely help us spread the word about those events when we have them, and we'll make absolute sure that you know as soon as we know when they're scheduled. So that is the end of what I had. Is there any kind of Olivia, do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up, or should we go ahead and wind down?
Yeah, I think we can definitely wind down, but I wanted to say that I appreciate everyone's time and the spirited discussion. A lot of really, really valuable feedback. If you can think of anyone similar with the pastor said, anyone else, Pastor Jones, that we need to speak to as we begin the process of getting the word out about this exciting project for the Third Ward community, let us know. If we need to have a one-on-one conversation, we're more than happy to do that. So we don't want to leave any community stakeholder out of the loop for this initiative. Please let us know.
All right, and that's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking an hour out of your time to help us as we go through this process. We really appreciate the fact that you did that, and shows us that you are community leaders, that you're willing to do so. So with that, please enjoy the rest of your night, and we will be in touch with you shortly with all the follow-up materials. Thank you, everyone.